Thomas, welcome to the eCommentary podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. We know how busy you are having just started a new role, but it's awesome that you could give us a little bit of your time to share some of your expertise.
Well, thank you, Jan. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, we're really interested today to kind of get into the mind of a CMO who's pretty experienced, who's had a really, really interesting route into the role of CMO, and having worked agency side and client side, I'm sure there's a lot of learnings that you can share along the way. But I think one of the best places to start would be, tell us a little bit about your journey to where you are now and how you got there.
Yeah, that's actually a good question. I think when I started off from like the university and I was supposed to go to my first job, it was like about the time where this like social media era was coming like on for real, and bigger companies were starting to search for social media profiles. And lucky enough, I was in internships at the both North side and another company where my role was to like kind of develop the social media strategy, because again we were in the early era of SoMe. So I started up working a lot on social media. Started at bestseller at the point, and I kind of moved on from there to become more digital, like being more holistic in the perspective of digital marketing. And one day I got a call from an agency, Densu, asking me to join them. I was at the called the energy drink provider, and we had a meeting with the agency, and like a couple of months later they called me and asked me if I wanted to join to kind of advise other brands on how to use their social media. Back then it was still more like a lot like organic content that was the main thing. And I always wanted to be on the agency side. So I said yes, and I was there for 4 years in different roles. Again, like the social media part was like shortly, and I started developing a more like broad profile that was focusing on digital marketing and creatives and content in a like much broader perspective. So I was a creative, what was it called? Creative director or media director, which I'm like with a creative mind of how to use media. And I think that is what has made my profile a bit different from what you normally see in like ad agencies or media agencies, where you normally have an art director or copywriter, or you have a client or a planner that will do all the planning of the media. My profile is like in between, so I'm really strong in the creative part, but I also have some strategic media planning in my profile, and I think that's why the fit in becoming a CMO in the digital native born companies have been really good. So I joined Bedre Nætter back in 2019 as a CMO, to try to develop their brand, going from being an e-commerce to be like what you could call a brand commerce, like with focus on branding. Because being a bed company, you have one big challenge, and that's that your audience, they buy a bed every 8th year. So what do you do in between? And that was kind of my role. So develop an intern agency that produced video, photo, copywriting, and so on. And now I'm at Eyda, more or less in the same role as in Bedre Nætter, trying to develop the marketing team around scaling and producing our own content and ads, and yeah. So I think that's kind of my journey for now, at least.
But I think it's really interesting, because I was reading the other day that like predictions about the future of the CMO, and that like if a CMO can't speak digitally, it's almost going to be very, very tough for them in the future because of the requirements to speak the language of performance marketing or performance creative or brand building and social. So my next question really would be about, like, for brands that are listening to the show, what should they be looking for when they are appointing a CMO? I know that people like you with your CV, they're not as common in the industry right now. What would your kind of recommendations be for what they should look for?
But I think a bit yourself, Andy, like you need to look at profiles that has some kind of digital native approach. They need to be able to transform like the company to a more digital company, and they need to be thinking like, I think it seems a bit ridiculous that in 2022 or 2022 we still talk about mobile first. But I've worked with a lot of agencies. I've been in several companies. I still see like design development, copywriting, everything being on like 27-inch screens, and no one is thinking mobile. And same companies know that 70% of their audience are visiting them from their mobile. So the mindset and the production of thinking mobile, thinking digital, thinking social, like it's still so important, and it's a factor that if you don't do it now, then you will lose in the near future. And I think that's also why you're seeing some brands that are developing super fast, especially here in Denmark, like that has such a fast pace because they are born digital and they know how to scale fast. So look for profiles that know how to transform your organization into a digital one is, I think, is key.
Yeah, and also the experiences that you had kind of agency side about kind of getting the strategy down, applying it, and then I think probably one of the transitions from agency to client side is like the pacing. And how have you found that, like the changes in pace from agency to client side?
Yeah, I think that's what I was scared of was actually the pace itself, because from an agency perspective, I see clients working like really slow, because I've also worked with quite some traditional clients on the agency side. And that's why we try to develop an internal agency, because as a digital brand, you need to move fast. So what is right today might not be right tomorrow. So you need to be able to execute quite fast. You need to produce fast, and you need to have the data to kind of know, okay, how to make the next content, make the next creative, the next ad. Like, so that pace that you have on the agency side is now moving towards the brand side or company side. You see big brands as well, like for example, Arla, Søstrene Grene, that are moving all this internally. And of course, when you need to develop so much content and you need to buy so much media, you need to be able to scale it fast. You need to execute fast. And of course, they also believe they could do it stronger than the agency and cheaper. But from a smaller perspective, like small company perspective or mid-size, it's about the pace. And I think the pace is moving from the agency to the company in the future.
Yeah, and I think that platforms such as TikTok are really forcing that for everybody involved, whether you're running organic or you're running paid on TikTok. The shelf life of a piece of content, you're talking days now, whereas previously you might be able to get a couple of weeks or a month out of a piece of content, and now you have that burn rate on the content. That's, you know, if you're not able to produce content multiple times a week, you're going to struggle with platforms like TikTok and also where Instagram are prioritizing Reels now. It's the same sort of setup, and I guess that's one of the challenges for for brands on the way up in their journey is like, how do you innovate in these environments that are fast paced? Like, what strategies have you put in place that have allowed you to be innovative but also very, very responsive?
For like in my time in Bedre Nætter, I think the main focus for us was to kind of have a framework that wasn't like a 20-page strategy on how to execute on marketing, but it was a framework where we had like some key points on this is how our brand will behave, and then again building up a team that then can actually execute within this framework. So again, young, creative, digital born team members that are able to develop content in a short time. I think that's the way to go in this new era where, and I agree with you, Andy, like TikTok, for example, will like set a new standard on how to develop. But I also think it's quite important for brands to remember their brand identity, because I also see a lot of brands that are just doing TikTok without remembering who they actually are and their own DNA. And I think if you're not able to take your brand DNA and your brand story into TikTok, then maybe that's not the platform for you. So you need to remember who you are and what story you're trying to tell. And the brands that will succeed with this are going to win on platforms like TikTok.
Yeah, and I think that's where, like, I completely agree with you that there's a danger with platforms like TikTok that brands jump on trends just to jump on a trend, or just for the accelerated reach. But at the end of the day, like, people will remember the trend, and if they're not remembering the brand, then possibly your purpose in that piece is a little bit at risk. You haven't promoted your brand. You've just jumped on a TikTok trend. You've got the viewership because that's what the algorithm wants. But at the end of the day, they can't remember who it was they saw it, whether it was a creator or if it was a brand producing that content. And I think there's a danger there. So that actually knowing like who you are, what your message is, and then picking the right trends to jump on. So if there is a trend that fits you, then go for it. But you don't need to be on every trend just for the reach.
I agree, and I also see a lot of brands like being proud of the reach they gained on TikTok, where I question, but what kind of reach? If it's not within your target audience, if you have like a target audience that are older or females or males or whatever, and it's not the fit, then what's the purpose? And again, I need to remember to ask ourselves, why are we doing it, and what is our brand DNA within the platform that we're working on. But right now, I don't see a lot of good cases on TikTok. I'm sure there's a lot of commercial potential on like making sales, but like brand wise, I don't see that many. But I think it'll come in the next couple of years.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be quite an interesting approach for brands, because TikTok is, if I say that it's clickbaity without the click, would you kind of get what I mean? You're engagement baiting with the content. So there's for a lot, there's not a lot of substance. And I think that, like you said, everybody's reporting KPIs on likes or how many impressions, but being controversial or talking very, very loudly about a subject and having a strong opinion seems to promote a reaction. And then there's all the algorithm hacks, and most people can do it, but how does that affect the bottom line?
Exactly.
So is the 1 million impressions that you gained, like, if that doesn't correlate to any web traffic,
I totally agree. And you need to remember, every time you open up a new platform, it's resources taken out from your marketing department. Now they need to work 10 hours a week on TikTok as well. They could have been well spent in doing even better on Instagram, being even better on your newsletter or whatever. So again, sometimes it's good to see a trend as a trend, but maybe also see, does it even make sense for us to be there?
Yeah, and I think that's where some of the content that you actually created at Bedre Nætter, that's probably still standing the test of time, some of the pieces that you put together, some of the articles that you guys shaped, like people are still reading those, and it has like an evergreen purpose rather than a see it, it's gone, and then you need to create the next 3 posts the next day to keep the algorithm happy and in your favor. But when you are going into a new role, just like you have done at Eyda, like there's a million things that you could do with marketing. Like there's brands like Duolingo that are doing cool stuff with TikTok. Then you've got brands like British Airways that are doing amazing stuff with like out of home advertising. Then you've got all the digital platforms. Like, how do you go about like shaping a strategy, and how do you establish priorities with a brand? Like, where do you begin?
That is a tough question, because I think there's several answers, but I think the most important thing for me is to know like the customers, the potential customers, what are their pains when buying fitness clothes. For those of you that doesn't know, Eyda sells women's fitness clothes. So what are their pains when buying, and being in that mode where they need to either transform their life, they want to be more active, or they want new clothes, active clothes in their closet. They want to purchase online for the first time. They always go to the same sports store in their local mall, whatever. To understand those pains will also give me some answer on how to like develop a strategy. And then of course there's thousands of ways to do that. You can do it like media wise, you can do it on content based, you can do it on social media, like ambassadors, influencers that we use a lot. Like there's so many ways to answer those questions and those pains that your customers might have. And I don't think there will ever be one answer for me as a CMO saying this is the right way. No, this is the path that we'll go for now, and then we'll kind of develop over time. Because again, being a CMO today versus being a CMO 10 years ago is like, it's so different. You need to be agile and be ready to kind of change the strategy that you put like 2 years ago. That doesn't mean that you change your brand, but the strategy on how you do things, you need to be very agile and flexible in the way you do things.
So I just wanted to touch on something that you said at the start about kind of profiling your customers. And I think, again, this is something super relevant at the moment, is that searching for that qualitative information. So like, how did you find us? What's important to us, as opposed to looking at quantitative like GA data about, oh, this person here, when people are spending time on this blog. Like in both of the brands, or in the brands that you're involved with, are you taking an approach where you're actually canvassing your customers about like why they chose the brand, or what made them, or what's important to them?
Yeah, at Bedre Nætter, we had like, we profiled our customers at like really basic into 2. One were like really data driven, like in the sense that the way they were buying a bed was like in numbers. So how many feathers, like how thick are the mattress, like really basic. And these were like typically men. And then there was then the other customers that would buy for the purpose of, I'm not buying a bed, but I'm buying like kind of a new bedroom, because I want the interior styling. Typically women, and this is the data saying it, not me. But of course, you have to approach these 2 kind of customers in different ways. So we also build content to like target like typically men that was really data or factor based, and then a lot of inspirational content for inspiration for how to develop your bedroom with colors, trends. We had trend scientists coming in telling what are the new colors, like all these kind of approaches to talk to the women. And then we made more like factor-based videos on winning tests, our CEO telling about why we developed the bed like we did and with how many things. And so I think that is like that was our approach to develop like content that would kind of I don't know the right word, but to kind of kill the pains that our clients would have. And in the same here in Eyda, I will look into what are the pains when you need to buy new fitness clothes. And then I will try and work with my team on like make it as easy as possible to buy fitness clothes online, because I think that's actually quite a hard challenge for women to buy that online, because they come in a lot of different sizes and shapes, both women and the clothes itself. So we need to match that best way possible.
Yeah, and that's almost one of our starting points with the brands that we work with, is that like it's not one customer you're talking to. There's so many different personas. And some of the best lessons you can actually learn about why someone will choose your brand is to actually look at, like, going on to Amazon, if another brand's selling on Amazon, and looking at the 1-star reviews on Amazon and finding out, like, what is it that people are talking negatively about, or Trustpilot, like seeing what people are positive about, what they're negative about, and actually starting to look at the words and the language that's being used, and then starting to use that to tailor your marketing campaigns to what people really like or what they don't like. But I think that it all starts in understanding that you're not just talking to one person. If you talk to one, then your campaigns are not going to be successful. You're going to alienate a lot of people. And I think that's super like an interesting approach, that you've got to talk to different people about different issues, and you see which ones hit and which ones don't hit, and you constantly change that strategy.
And I will also quickly say, just again, and it of course it depends on the size of the company, but I'm not talking about like being one-to-one in communication, because I don't believe that. I know there's a lot of software saying you can do that, like one-to-one, and Thomas needs this and Andy needs this, so you need to talk on a one-to-one level. But I'm never going to see it happen, because we cannot produce this much content. But trying to divide like people into groups is a good step like towards that kind of goal.
Yeah, and using like customer journeys, so post purchase surveys, finding out what people bought, what they like, and then using that data to then move people on. But it's like you said, there's a lot of SaaS companies out there that are saying, hey, you can find so-and-so at the right time, and you just need to do this, and it's so easy. But we're talking about scale, that like you can't do that whole, like, I'm talking to you right now. A, it's creepy, and B, you're going to run out of people. You're going to need, like you said, a lot of budget and a lot of content. So you've got to kind of figure out like roughly what they're interested in, and trial different things along the way. But this is, I think, what we're seeing now in 2022 is that brand beats everything. Like, a strong brand will beat everything. It doesn't matter how good you are at paid media, at Google ads, at organic social. Like, if you don't have a strong brand behind you, like, the best media buyers in the world can't do a good job with a bad brand. Like, those days are over. As someone who places a big focus on brand building and soft touch points, like, how do you approach measuring like marketing efforts, but also how are you communicating that with stakeholders and CEOs within the brands that you're working on?
I think one of the most important thing when talking leadership is to kind of develop cases where you can prove how much awareness can move brands, and how much it can also move sales in general. So you have a short and a long-term connection with awareness and sales. And in Bedre Nætter, for example, one of the main criteria, of course, again, beds are sold every 8th year to a typical client. So we needed to kind of develop brand over time. So when our customers was thinking of buying a bed, they would have Bedre Nætter top of mind. And as long as we could see our brand awareness going up, we also see our sales going up over time. But one thing is awareness, is also how to like converting it from awareness down to sales. And these we also did with the surveys to make sure that our brand was actually moving. So moving from awareness to consideration, like that our brand was getting stronger. So compared to our competitors, that more people would consider Bedre Nætter. So trying to build that case in like to the CEO, I think is quite important. And then of course also see if you can like combine or like attach the branding activities to some kind of more tactical KPI. We were lucky to be able to do surveys post buying a bed in Bedre Nætter that we could actually measure some of our branding activities. That could be our podcast, for example. And we were able to see how many people were actually listening to the podcast that would actually then also buy a bed. Those cases make it quite easy to like build and like have the talks with the CEO. But if you don't succeed with these like building these cases and talking to your CEO about this, then I think it will be a really hard job as a CMO in a digital born company.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the challenges that most brands are up against at the moment, is that we've had this period where we could literally see every 15 minutes we run a campaign. We can see who's clicking, we can see who's buying, we can see our ROI, and it's almost like a slot machine that we keep putting a pound in or a euro in and pulling the lever, and we make 3 out. And the CEOs get used to this, or that's what they've founded their brand on, is this approach of, well, we just need to keep spending, keep pulling the lever. Like, how are you tackling that transition away from that? Those good old days are no longer available. Now we have to go to this braver approach where you have to have a little bit of faith and.
Yeah. But to be honest, I'm not sure I have the answer to that. I think we have some very honest discussions about this, because it's a huge issue, like that we're not able to be concrete in our media planning and be concrete in where is the actual like conversion, and like to be more precise. So what I tend to do is to be as honest as possible and to tell my CEO that this is test and learn. So we will test media up against each other. We'll test creatives up against each other, and then try and develop over time. But I can say so much that in Eyda we are trying to invest more in like our own media, like email leads, content, like owning more on our own instead of putting all our money into Facebook, Instagram. Like the numbers are clear. It's more expensive than ever. The performance are worse than ever. So that's going to be one of our main focus the next year, is to own more of our own content and having a shorter way from like a lead to an actual conversion. And of course, there are several ways to do that, but email marketing is going to be one of our focus areas for sure.
Yeah, I think that's something that we've really looked into as well, is that like I loved Facebook ads probably more than anybody, like 2-3 years ago, and there's not many people who were day trading as much as I was on Facebook, in to the point of having these trading rule sets where if ROAS is this, increase budget by this, and it was very mechanical how we approached it. And then we started to see that those days are gone. You've got to adjust, and you've got to look at how do we build better creative that people want to follow, but then also how do we maximize the data collection through customer interactions. So we actually developed our own tools that when somebody is placing an order for the first time, we're cross-referencing with email marketing. Are they subscribed to SMS? Are they engaged on Messenger? If they are, great, we leave them alone. If not, we try to push them into one of those platforms for a better dialogue. And then we've got opt-ins on SMS, on Messenger, on email, so that we can then have a conversation. And it's not just about stuffing a sales message down people's throats, which I think that a lot of people, when they think email marketing, they just think, oh, we push out the latest offer or the latest product. It's got to be more than that. It's got to be, how do we have these good conversations, provide value, so that when people are ready to buy, then they'll come to us. But in the meantime, like, not everybody's going to buy new gym clothing every week, but you should be looking to deliver value even though they're not a customer. And this is one of the things that I see a lot of brands doing, maybe a little bit wrong with email, is it's just transitioning direct response from Facebook and Instagram into email. And that's where you see the unsubscribes and the poor open rates.
Yeah, and also, like, if in Eyda we have quite a high loyalty base, like, how do you keep that? How do you make sure that you don't week after week try to sell them a new pair of tights? I think there's a maximum of tights that you can have in your closet. So I agree with the, like, giving back. If they are following us, they want our products, we as a brand need to give them something. It could be whatever. It could be inspiration for new training, exercises. It could be how to cook special healthy meals, if that was the case, whatever. It could be starting a new podcast, like trying to give something back because you wanted to sign up on our emails, and because you wanted to be part of the Eyda community, we will give you this for free. And then, of course, once in a while, you also need to sell a pair of tights. So I agree, and I think that is like why I'm saying Eyda, we want to own more of our own content, because I think that's going to be like the main thing to keep our loyalty base, which is quite a high percentage in Eyda, like our sales, and we need to keep that, and we need to develop that, and we need to get even more customers in our community. Do we succeed with that? I think we can like create a really strong base of sales, which will make us grow faster. But yeah, it is tough times, to be honest. I've spoken to a lot of e-commerce, and right now with the iOS update and the Facebook, Instagram platform being as it is, like a lot of companies are having a tough time, and we need to rethink how we do things.
That's it. And that's the challenge, is that you can't play the same game that you were playing 2-3 years ago. And the brands that think that they can are the brands that are going to struggle, because those days are gone. You kind of got to move away from it, and you've got to almost accept that, yes, the platforms are more expensive than they were. That's a fact. Like they're not as cheap as they were. So your choice is either you work with the platforms and you develop a strategy around either collecting first-party data or pushing more brand campaigns, reach campaigns, things like that. But if you were just thinking, oh, I can use the same tactic as 3 years ago, that's where you're going to have issues, because you're not going to see those returns that you were seeing before.
And we also need to be like, it's also very obvious that we are post-COVID now. Like, so having iOS and then post-COVID, it's like the worst thing that could ever happen to e-commerce, because we feel like both. I think it also shows how strong retail actually is. Like, it's really back on track, and people want to go into stores. They want to go in, feel products. They want to smell. They want to like be out. And I think for e-commerce, we need to try to create those experiences digitally. Like, how can we get even closer? Right now, we are investing quite a lot in like live shopping. We had our first live shopping a couple of weeks ago, and it was a great success. And we were like really surprised on the potential and the success of like having 1,000 of our community fans being online with us to see our collection, and then actually the rate of purchase online. And I think this will, I know it's not a new thing, but I think in Denmark, we will see this grow like rapidly, and in Europe in general, because if you look into Asia, like it's crazy. Like they are 5 years in front of us when it comes to like social shopping and live shopping. And this will just, I think for e-commerce, it will be the next step to challenge the retail. That will be like things like live shopping and social shopping.
Yeah, I think that it's really exciting where that's heading. We've seen it used quite a lot in the States, where it actually allows you almost to have your own like trade shows, but you can do it every week. And actually, again, there's an opportunity there to do something cool with your live shopping, and actually make it so that people enjoy coming to it. They're seeing, you know, the influencers that they're following on social involved with this, and the results from it can be, you know, could be awesome. And I think that, again, it's just that constant search for innovation about like, how do we do more for our customers? How do we give, and how do we get them to buy? And it's usually reciprocated. If you deliver value, they come back and they buy from you. So I think that's a really exciting one. And then also, kind of depending on how you do it, the content that you actually create from that can be repurposed and used, so that it's another form of content creation that you can then use.
You have to look at Medtest as a case. Like for those that listen to this episode, just look on how they created their entire live shopping. Then go to medtest.dk, look at how all the videos are online, look how their social media are connected to all their live shows. Like they are doing a really impressive jobs on the whole live shopping. And unfortunately, I also see a lot of brands going the easy way and doing this ja tak tilbud, like where you go online and then you can just shop 25% off, like the local supermarket. And to be honest, I'm not sure that's the way to go. You need to build a strategy on live shopping and social shopping over time, and not like short-term sales, like building a retail concept. So that's at least how we're looking into it at the moment.
I think it's also quite interesting to see like some of the big e-com brands making that transition into live physical retail. Like brands like Gymshark are just launching their first retail store in London, and also I think it was a US consensus that showed that the market's actually correcting now. So the percentage of sales from e-commerce to retail, we've seen that dip back down into retail. What's your sort of predictions for that? Is it?
I think like post COVID, it showed me how strong retail is. To be honest, I was thinking that this would just keep going like up for e-commerce, but it shows that the retail is here to stay, and that we need to build path between e-commerce and retail. And you see also good cases in Denmark, like Shaping New Tomorrow, Dit, like starting up new stores, but also being really strong online. I'm not sure that is the way for Eyda, but I'm really impressed on how strong retail still is. There's also a lot of retailers that need to then transform into the digital part, because there is still a huge potential. But I think it's not neither or. It's both in the future,
and
building that connection.
Yeah, and it's creating that experience. And is that something that you're thinking that the metaverse might help with? Is bridging the gap? Is that something on your radar just yet, or is it something you're kind of tentatively watching?
I think in general, I'm just curious on how Eyda can build a really good brand and commerce experience. We want to be able to deliver the best possible customer service, the best customer experience with our products. And for our clients or customers not being able to touch our products, try them on, then we need to figure out how to like kind of get the experience that you're doing it. It could be in like so many different ways. We experience in like having a range of different models, like trying it on for you, or like how could you describe the product better? How could you make it like, how can you go into depth with the products, like look at them closer. We're trying to create videos on every single product, so our customers can actually see the products like moving and not only in the photos. Like, I think there's so many ways of trying to create a close enough experience that we will see an increase in our visit and in our conversions. But of course, it is a pain for our customers that they're not able to be there and try on the products.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that with fashion and e-commerce is the challenges of returns. It's something that I think every fashion brand, or everybody selling clothing online is facing, is customers returning products and the impact that can have in terms of the overall strategy. And it's a constant challenge of how do we reduce that number. And like you said, I think one of the things that Eyda do very well is showing diversity in their models, so that people can see, okay, this model here wears a size, and it's not just tall, short, slightly curvy, skinny. Like there's quite a range of models that you guys work with, and I think that's a really, really good approach to tackling sizing.
But actually, to be honest, I've also always been a bit curious on why some of the like really big fashion brands haven't developed like an online avatar or something like that, where you, with your phone, you screen your body and it will create a body avatar that shows you how your measurements are, and then they will combine it with each of their product lines. That's my idea of it in my head. Why haven't someone made that yet? It must be possible. And I think we'll see it in the future, that you have kind of a plug-in avatar connected to your online purchase. Like, think of Zalando or Zara or whatever it could be. Like, why don't you have an online avatar connected that will develop over time as you get bigger, smaller, whatever. That could be also a way to get even closer to fitting on your products. The next step would be like augmented reality, that you have your avatar, then you actually get it on your avatar. So you can actually go in a dressing room and try it on.
Yeah. There's a Danish company, Magic 5. They do swimming goggles, and their whole approach is they have a mobile phone, and it scans your face, and it scans the orbit of your eye sockets, and then they can produce a product that's very similar to fitting your face. And we had Rich Watson, an AR specialist, on the show a couple of weeks ago, and one of the things he was saying is that there's a challenge at the moment with the tech in AR for fitting clothing. So like glasses, watches, they can put on and you can have the experience, but there's something with the cameras and the way that the filters are created that clothing isn't quite there yet. But he was pretty confident that it's coming and that it'll be a massive help for brands. Yeah,
and the first step could also just be measure your body. You have an avatar, and then okay, you need a medium. You don't need to see it on, but just to like get as close to your body as possible. But yeah, it will be exciting times for like the fashion industry online, for sure.
And what are your thoughts on the like fashion in the metaverse? So one of the things that is cropping up more and more is that people are going to be dressing their metaverse character in NFT clothing, and brands are not going to need to hold inventory because people are going to be dressing in the metaverse. What's your thoughts on this? Can you see it happening? Unlikely?
I'm not in doubt whether it will happen, but I remember 6-7 years ago when I came home from South by Southwest, and I was talking to 250 people in a convention kind of thing to present what all the thoughts have been in Texas and everything. And I was like, in 2 years, virtual reality will be the shit. And now, like 6-7 years later, we're still like kind of in the same place where it hasn't really grown that much. I know that certain industries, they come like far, but for the private person, like in their home, you don't see that, and it will be maybe 20, 30 years before you see that happen. And it's the same with the NFTs, like investment wise, and it will grow really fast, but to be something that my mom would use or that I would use, I don't see it. I don't see it happening, to be honest, in the near future. But of course, over time, it will for sure be a thing.
And I think that's one of the challenges with any brand, is looking at, again, the resources that they put into sort of jumping on for early adoption status. We've seen Boohoo Group are already really kind of pushing NFT ranges, but of course their backing and their resources to do that, and Nike and brands like that, they've got the finances to jump on these trends and play the waiting game. But for the mass market, yeah, it feels a bit too early that people are getting excited about it. And also there's a lot of people on social media talking about it, but actually the expertise, they can't exist as widely as it's appearing. So we're watching, but unsure where it's going to go.
Yeah, and of course, like cases like Nike, where you could actually buy a limited pair of sneakers and then also get the NFT, it will happen. And I'm sure there are already cases now. But again, you also need to look at the broader perspective, and yeah, not in the next 10, 20 years, at least what I think.
And my final question of the podcast is all about marketing in the Nordics and the approach to marketing in the Nordics. What we've found when brands are trying to come into the Nordics is that unless you're a big name player, it's quite a challenging market because of the brand loyalty within the Nordics. What advice would you have for international brands? Obviously not activewear brands coming into the Nordics. Stay away, terrible market. But for brands looking to sell within the Nordics, what would your advice be for working with those audiences?
I think they need to understand the Nordic customers, and also understand that the Nordics are not the Nordics. It is Norway, Sweden, Finland, Denmark, and there's a huge difference between those brands. The way a Norwegian customer looks at brands is actually quite different from a Danish. So try and understand your customers and understand their pains when they need to be in your field. If it is fitness clothes, if it's cars, whatever, then try to understand their pains, because I'm not sure they are the same as they are in the country where the specific brand would be from. I think that would be the most important thing. And try not to look at the Nordics as the Nordics, but in different countries.
Yeah, it's always funny, and it always makes me laugh when brands talk about like targeting markets. They always say, "Oh, we're going to go after the Nordics. Everybody's got a lot more money in the Nordics. It's going to be a good market to crack." But actually, from experience, you've got to earn your right at the table in the region, and people, they have the brands that they're loyal to, and they're also, the consumers, especially in Denmark, they're very particular about what they like and what they don't like, and it's not something you can kind of push down their throats. They really know what they like when it comes to, especially with fashion. So I think that's a good heads up for brands looking, like that. You need to look at the way that you approach that market, and as you said, individually take that approach.
And we do this in Danish marketing, or Danish business, we do actually a bit of the same mistake, like looking at Norway or Sweden as, well, easy market, let's just go, because we can just copy what we already did in Denmark. But it's never really the case, because it's not the same, and you need to have a different strategy in Norway and Sweden than you do in Denmark.
Thomas, I could talk all day with you. I've really enjoyed the conversation, and my brain's working overload in terms of like the different strategies that can be implemented based on the conversation today. Thank you so much for your time. For those people who want to check out Eyda, is there any social media handles that they can have a look for, or those that want to follow you? Where should they go?
Hashtag Eyda is an easy way to look at our brand, I think. And then if you wanted to look me up, I'm on LinkedIn, Thomas Barker. Yeah, I think that's the
best places to start, and then they can go down the rabbit hole. But
send me a message if you have any questions or anything. We're more than willing to answer them.
Perfect. Thank you so much for your time. Really, really appreciate it, Thomas.
Thank you, Andy.